Miami Hurricanes made running back a key priority. To me, I thought it was the number one priority in the transfer portal after they got Cam Ward at quarterback, and they land a big-time running back in Damien Martinez out of Oregon State. So we brought on Angie Machado from Beaver Blitz, covers Oregon State there in the 24/7 Sports Network, to talk about Damien, what kind of impact he'll have in the ACC, his season. Angie, just overall, we're going to get into his career at Oregon State there, what he was able to do, the 6 yards a carry, over 2,000 yards, his time there, even look back a little bit at his recruiting stuff. But just welcome. And then what can you say a little bit about Damien before we dive into all this?
Yeah. It's Oregon State, it was a tough one to lose him, especially, there's been so much drama the past, 10 months surrounding Oregon State and the Pac-12 dissolving, Coach Smith leaving for Michigan State after the season. It has been probably the most tumultuous. I've covered the team for 18 years. Before that, I was a fundraiser at Oregon State. So I've been around the program a long time, and I've never seen so much upheaval. And Damien was one of the guys that actually said, "Hey, I'm staying. I love Coach Bray and I'm here." Fans really rallied behind him. And so when I caught wind, we broke the story that he was going to be entering the portal. Fans were really kind of taken aback. I mean, these are fans that had given a lot of money to get him to stay with NIL, buying his gear about staying. So that was a tough one, I think, for Oregon State fans to swallow, even with some of the upheaval that was going on. But moving on, Oregon State has 2 great backs now remaining. This was going to be a team that relied on a 3 running back system with Damien, and so now it's down to 2 with Anthony Hankerson and Jam Griffin. So onward and upward, and everyone wishes Dame the best.
Angie, before we got started, we talked a little bit about just Oregon State's history at running back. They've had good running backs over the years. What separated Damien, or maybe what was a little bit different with him? What's his skill set? How would you describe him? Again, most people watching this video, I've watched the highlights, I've seen it there. But can you break down his game a little bit? Obviously a bigger back, listed at 6 foot, 237, just what he's bringing to the table, what his skill set there.
He's big, he's physical. This is, like I said off before we jumped on, Oregon State has a long history of great running backs over the past 20, 25 years. So, you look back to Ken Simonton, Jacquizz Rogers, Evanson Bernard, Steven Jackson, some really good names there. A lot of times Oregon State, aside from Steven Jackson, we're relying on kind of a smaller, sturdier back. I look at Anthony Hankerson. He's out of St. Thomas Aquinas, actually. So Florida fans, Miami area fans may remember him from high school, but he's going to be Oregon State's, first team running back right now. Smaller guys, the thicker lower body, hit the hole. Damien was a bigger guy. He was one that was, able, just a power back. He's going to run the ball with intensity. He's done a couple things. His freshman year, I think what really set him apart when he finally starting was the fact that he hit the hole fast and was downhill runner. Last year, we saw him kind of dancing around a little bit. Of course, he had the ability to run behind a really, really strong offensive line. Oregon State's offensive line was one of the best in the Pac-12 last year. So he had that ability to kind of wait and see and pick a hole. But he's just a downhill runner. He's big, he's physical, and big. If there's one area he really needs to work on, it's going to be catching the ball out of the backfield. That was going to be a big point of emphasis with Oregon State's new offense this year. We'd seen them the first 2 weeks of practice of spring ball, basically taking all the running backs into the indoor facility with the quarterbacks. And we're working on that particular element, but just a big physical back is what Miami's getting.
Yeah. And when I hear that, and watch them, the downhill running certainly is impressive. And that's what Miami, they want that, with a good offensive line. Again, we're watching Oregon State from afar. It seemed like they had, they definitely created some holes for him, and he took advantage of that. Especially for me, it seems like as soon as he gets that line of scrimmage, or once he gets it going with his acceleration, a couple yards past the line of scrimmage, he can really, use good footwork and get downhill those extra yards.
And he's hard to bring down. I mean, he's, like you said, 6'1", 230, 237. Once he gets some momentum going, he's really tough for a linebacker to bring down.
Yeah, 3.8 yards per carry after contact, after contact according to Pro Football Focus. So that goes to your point there, a guy that kind of picks up additional yards. And that's what Miami wants. They want that power running game. It was important for Miami to add a running back, certainly of his caliber, but with the situation of Henry Parrish moving on, Trevante Citizen moving on, and then, the uncertainty of Mark Fletcher's availability. And the guys they have on the roster are not bigger backs. So they get Damien in there. I think he's got a chance to be one of the best backs in the ACC, just like he was in the Pac-12. There is a first team performer, third in rushing, 1185 on the rushing numbers there. If you look at his kind of game by game, what do you make of this past season for him? Had the 100-yard games to begin it. Even at the end, he stacked some 100-yard games together there. Struggled against Oregon in his last game, but just what would you kind of make of his season, the way it went along, and again, piling up the yards as the season went along for him in his second year?
Yeah. He, like I said, he changed his style a little bit, and I don't know if that was by design. I mean, here's a guy who's had a couple different running back coaches through his, couple years at Oregon State. Oregon State has replaced running back coaches every year over the past 4 years. So there's been a lot of turnover there, but the offensive line was the one kind of key piece. That the offensive line never changed. Damien's running style changed a little bit midseason, almost like he was trying, like I said, trying to make more instead of just taking his initial read and going. So again, big physical guy. Oregon, you kind of throw Oregon game out as an anomaly. I mean, that was a game the team basically had heard that Coach Smith was leaving and kind of pieced it together right before that game. So that game was just an ugly piece of work to begin with. And then he did not play in the Beavers bowl game in against Notre Dame in the Sun Bowl.
Is there a game that stands out? Again, you're looking at just over his career. It doesn't matter if it was the games where he had the huge rushing totals, or the 4 touchdown performance against Stanford. I know you throw out the Oregon one. The team didn't play well. The team played really well as a whole against Stanford there, the big win. So maybe the numbers are skewed a little bit there. But is there a game maybe that kind of defines Damien, or one that you'll leave over these 2 years that really stands out to you about the way he played? Maybe didn't start off well, or did start off well and finish strong, or a big moment in your mind?
Yeah, I'm trying to go. I mean, I think when you look at Oregon State's running game, you go back to the 2022 Civil War game with Oregon. Oregon State was down fourth quarter. They end up rushing it 19 straight times, running it right down Oregon's throat in a comeback victory over the Ducks. So you look at that game. That was a by committee. Damien wasn't in that one all by himself. And Oregon State does. They're not going to rely on one guy. Damien's the starter, but they always had some other guys mixing in, whether that was a change of pace back. Oregon, it was fun to watch just what happened last year. They lost Jam Griffin. Jam Griffin transferred to Ole Miss. Griffin came back this year. Everybody was excited because he's going to be your little shifty guy out of the backfield to make, to catch balls. So they were excited to see how that would mix up with Damien. But, I look to that game as probably, one of his key games.
Yeah, and just kind of going back to what you said about catching the ball out of the backfield, 11 catches, 126 yards last season, not a touchdown. The most he had in a game was 2 last year. Do you think that can be something that he can add to his game, or is it just something that's just not his style? It is what it is. I mean, that happens with players quite a bit too. Or do you think, with the offense, another year older, a point of emphasis, if he continues to have that point of emphasis? I know you touched on Oregon State, wanting him to do that, but do you think that can be a part of his game a little bit?
I think it has to be. I mean, he has aspirations to play in the NFL. Catching the ball out of the backfield has to be just as naturally as blocking out of the backfield. Running backs these days are not maybe as high ticket items because you can find guys that can run the ball. You can find guys that can catch the ball. You need guys that can do it both. So I think for him to take that next step, he's going to have to. Now, I don't know a ton about Miami's offense, so I don't know how they're going to utilize him. Like I said, his strength obviously is running downhill, but I think to be that complete back that, what he wants to be, and in order to make that step to the NFL, he's going to have to develop that part of his game.
For anybody that hasn't seen him, anybody can look at the stats and the numbers and even listen to us talk a little bit about him. But is there something that stands out to you about him that maybe people don't know? Either we're talking about maybe it's his work ethic, maybe it's some leadership stuff, or some intangibles, or maybe the way he goes about it. Are there some things that you can provide a little bit background? And I still want to get into the recruiting stuff about what he was like as a recruit, but just, are there things about Damien that maybe people don't know about him outside of looking at some stats?
Yeah, he's a real quiet leader. He's a lead by example guy. He's not going to be a guy in your face. He's pretty mellow, pretty chill. He's, it's different compared to some of the running backs that we've covered that are a little more vocal, a little more, I think back, like I said, I've done this a long time. So a guy like Evanson Bernard or Jaquiz Rogers, that were kind of the heart and soul of the team. That's not necessarily him. Now, again, this year he was coming into the season as Oregon State's best offensive player. And so he knew he had to have that, shoulder that, of being more of a leader, I guess. And I say leader in air quotes. But like, he is a lead by example kind of guy. He is going to be the guy that, just goes out, works hard, and lets his work, kind of be the show.
And I think as a running back, that seems to be a good quality for running backs, of just go get it, kind of do your part, and definitely play tough. I know Miami, again, ever since Mario Cristobal landed as the head coach of the Hurricanes, he's wanted that physical running back downhill. They wanted to excel in it. They did improve the running game from where they were at before Cristobal arrived, but it's not with where they want to be. Yeah, I think they do want to run the ball. Again, they got Cam Ward in to throw the ball, and I think getting a guy like Damien in here will certainly kind of maybe address some qualities that they've missed out on the last couple years.
He's going to be that big physical running back. That's really going to be his strength.
So coming out of Louisville, Texas there, he was a 2022 recruit, 3-star recruit, number 35 in the country, according to 24/7 Sports, number 48 in the composite rankings, 600 overall in the composite rankings. So not a highly regarded guy, not a guy that Miami fans are used to getting on campus as a high school recruit, typically like that, but a guy that completely, became a highly productive player. And again, he produced at Louisville, 1,700 yards, 26 touchdowns as a senior. But what do you remember either about that or maybe his progress to get to where he's at today, just 2 years later?
Yeah, Oregon State is that team that goes after those, the high 3-star rated guys. That's their MO. They're going to find guys to develop. And that was when they went after him. I'm looking at his offer sheet. He had Georgia Tech, Kansas, San Diego State, and Texas State. Not super major big offers. He came to Oregon State. He liked Corvallis, college town, everything revolves around Oregon State and the campus. And he had a shot, to come in and, under Coach Smith at the time. And like I said, we talked to him as a recruit. He was, excited to be there. Again, it's, you talk about Miami fans kind of having higher rated guys. Oregon State's used to this. This was the guy that Oregon State fans were excited about, and to see where he would be. We initially didn't think when he signed, we thought, well, we'll see. Probably a year or two. There's some other guys in the room, and then we watched him fall camp, and you're like, wow. This guy. In fact, I was surprised it took him as long as it did to get him on the field. Starting, he dabbled a little bit. They kind of eased him in, but he really popped come fall camp. Like you saw what he could do, and especially with some of the other guys that were, he was competing against. Great running backs, but just a total different, typical, a smaller, shiftier back. So to give that 1-2 punch where you have a power running back that's 6'1", 230, super hard to bring down. You pull him out and you put in the 5'9" guy that it's like a little bowling ball that you can pick up some extra yards. It was a really good combination. But again, fall camp, it started to be like, okay, this kid's got game.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to take any time when he gets to Miami compared to, when he arrived there. When he arrives at Miami, he's going to be expected to be the number one guy, the clear-cut number one. And they will, they're still going to sprinkle in their guys. You keep touching on how they've paired Martinez with some other running backs. Miami has that too. They've got the 3 smaller backs. Currently, they're bringing in another one this summer. So I think the way that's going to fit, they're certainly going to get carries for those other guys. Again, Fletcher, we'll see. He's the other bigger back that they have, but waiting on as he comes back from a shoulder and foot injury, missed all of spring ball. So Angie, I appreciate it. Great insight. I always like doing these. It helps myself to learn more about them, but I know the fans really enjoy diving into a new player like this. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Anytime.